Speaking Tongues. I'm here with Itto. Itto Outini is a journalist, Fulbright Scholar, Steinbeck Fellow, MacDowell Fellow, public speaker, and author of the forthcoming memoir, Blindness is the Light of My Life. She holds an MA in journalism and strategic media from the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, and a BA in applied linguistics from Mohamed V University in Rabat, Morocco. Itto has published with US-based and international outlets including the Relatable Voice Magazine, the Fulbright Chronicle, and the Chicago Tribune. Organizations for which she has spoken include the United Nations, Caltech University, Verizon Wireless, and the International Trade Center. In addition to writing and speaking, she offers a diverse suite of services tailored to writers, young professionals, and entrepreneurs. Itto, it's such a pleasure to welcome you to Speaking Tongues. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much. I'm excited to share what I have learned and know and everything about languages.
I'm really excited to talk with you, and I know that you have such an incredible journey and such an incredible story. I like to start each episode with the same question, which is, what is your first language, and which languages have you learned to speak?
My first language is Tamazight, which is a one of the languages of North Africa.
Mm.
Originally, I'm from Morocco, so it's a native language. That was the first language I was introduced to when I came into the world. I speak all and understand all Arabic dialects, French and Standard Arabic, as well as English, of course, which is the language we're talking in now.
hmm
Mhm.
That's really cool. I think that's really cool. And I love that you specifically said that you understand and you speak the other dialects of Arabic. And because, we've spoken about Arabic on this show before and how they vary across North Africa and the Middle Eastern region. So I think it's really cool that you have that connection to all of the different Arabics out there.
For sure, it's really cool, and I love languages, and that's why I specialized in applied linguistics in my BA, and I love learning languages. I love also playing with languages,
hmm
like basically I call it torturing languages. I dismantle words and sentences and switch them, make up my own words, and yeah, so I love, and also thinking about, for example, when one word means totally different thing in another language. The way I learn languages is through storytelling, and in this case I told stories to myself.
hmm
I would like get a word, tell story to myself so that I can learn that word and use it in different contexts.
Yeah, I love that. I love what language can do. And I love that, when you feel confident enough to play with different languages and play with vocabulary and words in different languages and make it yourself, make it personal to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to know your story. I'd love for you to give our audience a background on your story. And I know that your story is very unique. I think a lot of us have unique stories, but your story is very unique and how you came to where you are now. And I'd love for you to share that with our audience.
It's been a journey for sure. I finalized my memoir. Yay! Now it's that process of publishing it,
hmm
which will detail everything about, not everything. It's impossible. Like as I said, I've lived 35 years, and I always joke about. I think I have lived 35,000 years. I tell my husband I'm 35,000 now. Because I lived through everything from what you think when you read books about ancient people to farming to like everything that humanity has to go through for years or decades or centuries. I've done all of that in 35 years. Originally, like as I said, from North Africa, Morocco. I was born in the middle of nowhere with no access to technology, podcasts, anything like media, television, radio, running water, electricity, nothing. I was in a very isolated small community with like 5, 7 families. Everyone knew everyone. And like as I said, we didn't have, at least kids and women, we didn't have access to the outside world, including education. I didn't have access to school. I didn't know how to read, but we are known for oral storytelling. And I loved stories as a kid. I did what I call audio editing now, like in my mind, of course, not audio editing, what we do in we edit podcasts or videos. But I would change characters and go and tell stories to animals and to myself. So I guess I was a journalist since I was a kid. But of course, I had no idea what journalism was.
Right.
I didn't even know that cities and countries and continents existed. I had no idea. I was very limited, which means that also linguistically I was limited, and so was everyone else. I don't know now, for example, I'm sure it's been over 20 years since I left a place where I was raised as a kid. I'm sure now there's a lot of borrowing with things that entered the space. For example, electricity. I don't know if they would use the same word like in Tamazight, acid, which is a word for light, to mean like electricity, or they borrowed it from Darija, which is Moroccan Arabic, or French. It's interesting to know. Unfortunately, I don't know anyone. I'm not in touch with anyone from the community.
Right.
Both my parents died when I was very young, so I was raised in, well, I guess you can call it raised, but I lived in different houses. My family, unfortunately, both my father and my mother's side were not a loving family or caring for that matter. So I was abused. And as I said, I was not able or allowed or cared for enough to go to school, even when I was in places where schools were available. At 17, that was when I started school for the first time. I had no idea that education was a thing for people like myself. And when I was 17, that's when my life changed. I was blinded by a family member, and I was abandoned by my family. It's like, as I said, it's a long story, but my family just didn't see that I was useful anymore. I ended up becoming homeless for 6 years. But at the same time, I also, like, as I said, started school. And I learned Braille, which is a method that blind people use to read and write in a day. And I learned French and Standard Arabic. But other languages, I basically learned them on the street. A little bit of English too. I learned what's your name, how do you spell it, where are you from, and the basics of English on the Moroccan street. There was a homeless woman who was at a kind of orphanage, and she, I think, ran away, or I don't really know. I can't speak to why she no longer was there in that orphanage, but she was homeless, and I would go to her and she would teach me some English words. And I met an American couple who helped me introduce me to the American language centers. And I was given, after I passed a few levels, I was able to study for free at the American Language Center. I was given scholarship to study, and I started from beginning five, and I managed to get certified in art of debate, art of arguing, public speaking, and English proficiency. And I passed my IELTS, TOEFL, and GRE. For those who don't know what those tests are, they are required for anyone whose English is not, well, IELTS and TOEFL, to anyone whose English is not their first language to study abroad. But GRE is basically required for anyone to go to grad school in the US. Most of schools require GRE. And I applied to the Fulbright Scholarship and was awarded the scholarship in 2017. And they came to the University of Arkansas, where I studied MA in journalism and strategic media.
I just think that it's such an incredible story and such a, you know, a testament to determination and education, especially because I don't know how you feel. And I don't know, we don't have to talk about this, but like sometimes I feel like education is so important, but I don't necessarily feel like people, especially in the US, really take it as seriously as they should, you know? And I think some people do, but I think education really is such a key to changing our lives. And I love to hear your story and how education was so crucial for you in changing your life and, you know, putting you on a completely different path and a completely different trajectory. And I'm so happy that you had that opportunity.
I agree with you. I think a lot of people, not only that they don't take it seriously, but they think it has to come for free.
Mm,
A lot of challenges I face when I tell my story is people want to hear just the end, right? Like, not what it takes to make something, but, oh, you have that thing. I want to look at it. We
mm,
just want, as humans, the party, right? The last stage of anything.
mhm.
But for me, sharing my story means I have to share everything, the struggles. Even with education, it wasn't free.
Mhm.
It didn't come to me. I always say opportunities don't come to you. You have to seek them. You
Right.
have to look for opportunities. I don't know much about in the US. I've been here for 7 years. I am happy to share uh, what has been taking a lot of my time and energy. So I haven't looked much into education, but I can speak about Morocco. Morocco's education system is really hard.
Mm,
Not anyone can pass. You have to work so hard to pass the tests. You
mhm.
have to prove to your teachers and professors that you deserve whatever the grade you get. They're not
Mhm.
going to give it to you for free. There's no such thing. So when I started school, I was 17. I remember my first day when my teacher asked me, "How do you spell your name?" And I said, "You don't really have to spell it." That's how ignorant I was, like, literally. Um, and I didn't even know how to count from 1 to 3. I
Hmm.
had no idea that I was here in the seventh grade, not the first grade, because of my age. I was not allowed to start from the first grade, and I had to catch up. The director of the blind school, who happens to be blind himself, was 100% against me. He was saying this Berber Amazigh girl shouldn't be here in school because I embarrassed him. I was dirty,
Oh my
homeless. Like,
God.
what do you
Yeah.
expect? Like, you don't expect homeless people to wear, perfumes and dress, well, and like suits and whatever. I was fighting with life. And my teachers, my science teacher, math, history, and geography, specifically the three, were very supportive. My science teacher would take all of her weekends and record lessons for me, like the eighth grade, the ninth grade, the 10th grade, whatever, like the 2 upcoming years. She would record that to me. She would get me braille papers and help me like read out loud the books because I couldn't afford to braille all my books. So I
Right.
relied on sighted people, my friends and my teachers, to read out loud to. When I started school, I was not in the dorms because the director, like as I said, was really like, oh, he wanted me to have a sponsor, whatever. Like he just wanted to do anything to not let me go to school. I don't know why. I learned Braille in 1 day, and in 2 weeks, I was ready to take exams with my classmates, and I passed the seventh grade. Instead of spending a whole year, I did it in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And my friends were I had two friends in the blind school. They were shocked and saying, it's okay, you can come back to the seventh grade, and next year you're going to go on to the eighth grade. And I said, no way. I wasted enough time. 17 years was more than enough for me to know that I had no time to lose. So I spent that time reading and writing every day. Literally, I had no time off. Weekends, holidays, I traveled all over the country because, as I said, I was homeless. And every time I was carrying my books, I protected my books more than I protected myself. I was, like, as I said, I was not educated, so there were a lot of things that I didn't know. For example, I would go to the bookstore and ask them to buy a book for like Moroccan money's dirham, like for 1 or 2 dirhams, which was funny. The books didn't cost that. They were way more expensive. And there was this guy and his sister who owned the bookstore, and they let me take books on credit, which again is like funny, but they believed in me and supported me. But the students in the blind school didn't want to study. They hated me for working hard. And I would say all my blind teachers did the same. It was really sad to see that people like myself who are blind didn't support me. And there was a blind teacher who was abused by her husband, and my cited ninth grade Arabic teacher said, don't listen to this kind of things. Don't get married just because you are blind and someone would abuse you. So I took my teacher's advice seriously and invested everything in myself and invested in education. So there was a protest in the blind school about what? About why the food didn't taste good. And for me, I didn't invest in that. I'm like, the food, as much as I love yummy food, it's okay. It's not as good as education. Books taste way more than any food out there. Like, they're the most delicious things that exist. So I was feeding my brain instead of focusing on things that were not lasting. I invested in my education. And when I passed the 12th grade, I went to the university and I was the top at the university. Everyone knew me. My professors were very supportive and then I was selected to Mohamed V University in Rabat and got the Fulbright Scholarship. I haven't met any blind Moroccan who got the Fulbright Scholarship, or even someone who has accomplished what I have. And as I said, I think there are, of course, challenges that people face, because I know that I have faced them myself. But a lot of people, and I can speak again for my classmates, they chose not to. With a lot of they were wasting their time on, like as I said, protesting over stupid things, not choosing to read, and saying like, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to struggle, and complaining to why things were not the way they were. Like, for example, why didn't we have Braille books? Why didn't we have assistive technology, computers? I didn't care. I didn't want to waste my time complaining about what I didn't have, but instead I took advantage of what I had and made the best of it, and used whatever resources that were available to me to change my life, because I was not satisfied with how things were. I was not happy being homeless. I was not happy having to wait until someone would come and, hand me a piece of bread or money or whatever, or dirty clothes on the street. I knew that I could do better. And I had dreams and goals. Like, I was reading books, and I was dreaming about traveling to Miami and working for the UN. And I have accomplished all of that. I've been to Miami more than 5 times. I've worked for the UN, and I have become a journalist. And here I am in the US. Like, all of those things were like anesthesia, numbing the pain that I was experiencing when I was homeless, like hunger, cold, isolation, and everything that life was throwing at me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Girl, that's a story. That is incredible. I think that's so incredible, and I really thank you for sharing that, for sharing your determination, and like you said, you're not waiting for people to give you the opportunity. You went out and you took it for yourself, and I think that's tremendous. I think that's absolutely tremendous, and everything that you've been able to accomplish is just as tremendous as having that will and determination to do that. I want to take a step back just a little bit to talk about language, to talk about Tamazight. And if you know, and I always feel kind of like funny asking this because some people I speak to are linguists and others are not linguists. So you can answer this however whatever makes sense to you. But in talking about the language, I'd love to know just, how the language is constructed and how the language is used. What are some of the hallmarks of Tamazight as it's spoken in Morocco? Because I also understand that it's spoken in Algeria, and other parts of North Africa. But what are some of the hallmarks of it as it's spoken in Morocco? How do we form sentences? Is it tonal? And anything else that you find interesting about the language itself?
There are a few things here. So Tamazight was not a standard language, meaning I never learned how to read and write it.
Mm.
And in 2013, Morocco has finally made it a standard language, and it has its own alphabet, which is Tifinagh. I don't know how to. I haven't even seen Tifinagh. I've heard that they're so pretty.
So pretty.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
pretty.
they look really good. And it was funny. My American host father sent me this long email saying, "I wish I could describe them to you," and like was telling me trying to describe them, but not really.
Mhm.
So I learned Tamazight orally, meaning I just learned how to speak it. Basically, I heard news in Tamazight, but it was interesting. The standard is really hard because what I think, and I'm sure there are people who have studied it extensively and know better than me, but what I think they combined all of them. So in Morocco, there is Tamazight, Tessusit, and Teshlhit. So all of them are totally different. And to standardize it, there has to be a combination of all of them. And within each language, there's different dialect. Some people still consider those, even Tamazight and Tessusit and Teshlhit, dialects. Some people consider them languages. But even within Tamazight, for example, which I was raised speaking, there's, for example, Ait and these are like groups of people who spoke them or speak them. And they are different. You can find different words for different things. Like, for example, the word for head is akhshash in my language. But then there's another group of people that call it aqro and ikh. So, like, for example, you can go to, like, I was raised to speak Tamazight that is spoken in the Bulman region, and then moved to Azro. Uh, it's possible, like you can understand them, but there are some words that are different, and I think that's the impact of Arabic
Mm.
and specifically Darija, and they are mixed. There's 8 Arabic dialects in different regions of Morocco. For example, if you go to Marrakesh, people speak with different accent. Fes and Tangier, Titouan, and like the north, people even don't consider us from the same country. That's
Mm.
how crazy it is. So they're totally different, and the way the grammar, the syntax, and the semantics, as I said, is also different. There has been a lot of things going on, like borrowing a word from one dialect to another because people moved around. And as I said earlier, where I was raised, it was an isolated place. So when modernization was introduced, like electricity, water, running water, televisions, radios, and phones, a lot of borrowing had to happen for that to take place. Or like even maybe for the communities inventing their own words. For
Right.
example, we don't have a word for blue. We say green like a grass or green like the sky.
Oh.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I've heard lately that they invented it and call it azengeli.
So I'm wondering now, as you're on your own, you're 17 and you're in the city and you've only been exposed to Tamazight, and you're encountering different people who speak different languages. And what was that experience like, maybe on a day to day of trying to communicate in your language? And were you meeting other people who spoke Tamazight, or were you not? And how was it like communicating in that time?
I learned Darija before 17 when I moved to my mother's side, my mother's
Okay.
family side. So I knew Moroccan Darija when I was 17. So I was able to communicate with people on the street, but I was limited. I still had accent because Darija for sure is not my first language.
Mhm.
I was made fun of. So I guess it was an introduction to the US, right?
Oh.
So I was, I would, I'm like, yeah, you have an accent. And I was like, yeah, I know it. Thanks for the reminder.
Right.
I remember at school, at the university, I wanted to deny the fact that I am an Amazigh and I spoke Tamazight so bad. It was literally so uncomfortable.
Mm.
And I remember one of my classmates who herself is an Amazigh, and I went with her many times to her place, and she was asking me to hand her pen that was dropped in front of me, and I pretended not to understand her. And she was like, "Come on, hand it to me," and I literally didn't. I froze. I worked so hard to speak and act like an Arab
Mm.
because when I was in blind school, that was one of the reasons blind students and teachers didn't like me. I managed to be okay, especially when I moved to the capital, to Rabat, and just my name was also challenging because Itto is an Amazigh name. And I was like, yeah, my parents named me after a woman they admired, which is actually true.
Mhm.
But of course, she was an Amazigh woman who fought in during the Morocco's colonization from France. But the story itself was not enough to delete, I guess, my Amazigh identity. And until I came to the US and I read books by Fatima Sadiqi, who is a linguist, along with her husband, they've written a lot of articles and books about Tamazight languages, the power of women in Amazigh culture, and identity. And when she has in one of her books a story about how when her father came to pick her up and she refused to speak Tamazight back to him because it was embarrassing, I was like, oh my God, I relate. Until I came to the States. Before then, I wasn't publicly saying that I am Amazigh back in
Mhm.
Morocco. When I worked as a journalist, I worked so hard to make my Arabic accent as Arabic as it can be.
So there's a lot of tension in Morocco with, having that identity of being Tamazight or versus being Arab. And I wasn't aware of that.
Yes, it is. Once I was working at a place, and well, I was a journalist, and I said on air, my name is Itto Outini, and I remember I took a taxi, and someone said, "Was it you that was speaking at radio station?" And I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Why are you faking your name?"
Oh my God.
Because of the ideologies behind it, and they say we were in caves before the the Arabs came in, and I mean, there's nothing wrong being in caves. I'm happy with that. All the humans had to live somewhere
Right.
once. We all we all lived in caves. There's nothing wrong with that. I wanted to belong. I wanted to have friends, and I wanted to succeed in schools, and that's why I did it. Also, at the University of Moulay Ismail, where I got my in MacNess, where I got my associate degree, there were protests from like the Amazigh Student Association, Arab Student Association, communists. I didn't want to be part of any of those groups because I agree with violence. I am a person of peace. I don't think protesting would take anyone anywhere. I didn't want to participate. So that was another motivator for me to not identify as Amazigh.
I had no idea that there were these attitudes that people had. And I guess it's kind of like around the world with groups that are indigenous and groups that are colonizers or, you know, multiply colonized places where, people who are indigenous are not really given the respect that they should be.
Yeah, and you are seen, like in my case, I was seen as an underdeveloped. Well, academically, it was true. I mean, imagine someone at 17, you didn't even know how to spell your name. So there
Mhm.
was a lot of catching up to do. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't human, right? Like I
Right.
still needed, in order to belong, to speak and act a certain way. And lack of information was very challenging because I didn't know things. I didn't know, like I remember one of my teachers in the blind school, he asked me a question, and when I answered, he was telling my classmate who failed to answer earlier, look at the Berber girl, the dirty Berber girl.
Oh
She's
God.
able to answer this. And I didn't want to be called those things.
Of course.
I knew that I was still the same person I was before, but also there was a few things, like I was confused as a young person or younger. I didn't know if I wanted to be Amazigh or Arab because I have, like, I am a mixed. My mom was an Arab and my father was Amazigh, so that was quite a journey. It was confusing because my father's family tortured me, my mother's family tortured me, but I had to choose whether to identify as Amazigh or Arab. So now I have taken what I like from both cultures and
Mhm.
just discarded what I don't.
Right.
Um, that's
That's all
that's
you can do, right?
yes.
I'd love to ask you about, you said you were telling stories, and you said that in Tamazight that it's an oral tradition, there's an oral language. What kind of stories are we hearing, and what kind of stories are we telling one another that maybe are repeated or part of a tradition to tell?
It's actually funny. Later I learned that Hansel and Gretel
Hmm.
was a story that was circulating around. So humans told stories before they learned how to read and write. That's why I said earlier, I feel like I've lived it all. So a lot of stories that are like short stories that are told were told orally before I went to school, and I learned that actually those stories are told in different parts of the world. But for me, the stories that I told were really weird. Stories of goats telling stories to ships, insects, rocks, water, like all of it. There were songs that I turned into stories. um, there were also scary stories because my mother died when I was very little, so I don't remember her. And I would tell stories about a good mother one day, and then I'll have really good dreams. And then the next, I'll tell stories about scary mother, and then I'll have nightmares. There were like old women told stories to scare kids or to make them go to bed. Or I don't think there was, of course, different stories, but I think the same outcome. stories were told to activate different types of emotions.
How did people share these stories with one another? Were they through get-togethers, or were they, like you said, older women would tell stories to scare children? Like, I guess what was the method of sharing these kind of stories among community?
So whether over a cup of tea, like people will get together and drink tea, or when women are weaving the quilts, they tell
Mm,
stories to each other. Kids to put them to sleep, or like as I said, to scare them or to make them do things, different situations, but also through singing. Like for example, you we used a lot of drums, and you can like people tell stories to each other through songs. Like there's a one side, like the bride side, the groom side, and one person would hold a drum, like start a little bit and then start telling stories. They call that Tim Diazin in Tamazight. And Tim Diazin is like, I'm gonna tell you my part, and then you tell me your part, and then it goes back and forth at
hmm.
your the weddings.
I love a wedding tradition. I want to like explore more of those on this show because there's so many. I feel like, being in the US, our tradition is very, between you and me, it's a little bit boring. And people aren't singing and they're not sharing stories, and they only last for a couple of hours, and the bride wears white, and that's boring. And that's, no shade to the brides out there, but I like
Mhm.
I like a I like a I like a little bit of liveliness. I like some liveliness and some storytelling. Just switching gears a bit to Darija, when you were learning that language and you were starting to pick up a bit of that, did you feel like you were connecting to another part of yourself or creating a different self as you were learning this other language? Did you think about it at that time? Was it just something that happened, or were you thinking consciously about a new identity in a new language?
That's really a interesting question. And the only language that I've had that experience with is English.
Mm,
Darija, it was uh, I had to learn it to survive. I had to learn it to speak with people, to communicate. And it happened unconsciously. Like I didn't sit down and, like take a book and learn. It was oral. I had to learn things and pick up words and sentences and idioms and all of it as I go. When I was learning French and standard Arabic, I did it so that I can pass the tests.
mm,
But with English, yes, it was linked to my identity, the love of language, the love of culture, um, dreams, writing, like all of it. With English, it's totally different. But with other languages, it was like as I said, survival, means of communication, the passing my school. I didn't even like I can't even remember the process and when I started speaking Darija. Even now, actually, some of my friends say, "Wow, you're Moroccan. Darija is weird. You speak really in a really weird way."
hmm,
A lot of my friends would say, "You came from underground." Meaning in Morocco, you were underdeveloped, and then you came in English we say you came to the party late, because I was late. I remember my English teacher. I was 22 or 23 when I started learning English, and he said, "You will never learn this language." And I said, "We'll see." And he said, "No, you are old. I am speaking from research. The research shows that if you are more than like 16 or 17, there's no way to learn
mm.
languages." And I said, "Well, there is a way." And I remember after a few years, I met him at the American Language Center, and I was speaking English with him, and he's like, "Wow, I will never say that research has done something because there are exceptions." And I said, "Yeah, research is real and it's correct, but not with me. Like I was in love with English and I wanted to learn it, and I learned it in 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How?
I listened to a lot of audiobooks,
Mm,
and I got any book I could find my hands on and had my friends reading out loud. I would be like learning every day, no nonstop. And I learned and remember when I met my American friends and I started making conversation with them, and they're like, wow, how did you do this? And I said, I don't even know, but I was aware that I was learning with English, but with other languages I was just picking them as I go.
mm. I mean, some people spend a lifetime trying, and I speak English, and I still am like, this language is hard. Like English is hard. So I'm speechless that you did it in 6 months. I think that's absolutely terrific.
I'm still learning English.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know what? I think that we're all always learning, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's, but 6 months. Whew.
Yeah, well, you can learn because when the language is not your first language, you learn the most important things, syntax and semantics. But sometimes you come across um, a word that you don't know. And a few days ago, my husband and I, we love reading together, and we got a science book. And I said, oh, is it okay if I start asking you questions about vocabulary? Because it's like another language.
Mhm.
And he said, oh yeah, I will stop to learn to look up words too, don't worry. And I said, no, you're a native speaker. And he said, no, I'm not a native speaker in science, so I'll have to I will come across words that I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think some people are afraid, they don't want to say that, oh, like I'm still learning, I come across terms that I don't know, because they're afraid of people judging them.
Mhm.
But also, English is a language of science, a language of technology, it's a lingua franca. So every day we come across a new English terms. But other languages, as I said earlier, they are limited. Like
Yeah.
Tamazight is very limited. Tamazight is spoken in different parts of the world, but as I said, those are different. I remember I was called to interpret here in the US for a school, and the guy started speaking, and it was like, oh my God, what are you saying? And it was Tamazight from another country. And then I asked him, do you speak French and Arabic? And he's like, yeah. And I said, okay, let's switch. And at the end of the session, for Americans, they said, wow, the Berber language sounds really good. And I said, I am so grateful. Thank you. And like just to myself, I said, yeah, I'm glad I speak Mini, but I would have been stuck if it weren't for the fact that I had other options.
What was it that was different was it vocabulary that was different? In this particular instance where you were translating, like where were
The whole
you
thing,
the whole
the,
thing?
yeah, the whole thing. It's like someone now showed up and started speaking Italian. And
Mhm.
both of, I don't know about you, but I would be like, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, this is good to know. This is really good to know that, we don't want to lump people together, and we don't want to be misinformed about, things that are not the same. It's important to recognize, I think it's important to recognize those differences and not just lump everyone together in a
Hmm. Yeah. Well, lumping everyone together is a thing that I am trying to educate people about, because
Mhm.
when people meet me, I'm like, I am Moroccan, but I don't represent all Moroccans. I am blind, but no, I don't represent blind people.
Mhm.
Everyone is different. I am brown, but I am different. I'm a different human being. But I think because of the group and in group situations, people feel more comfortable to put people in a box and say like you belong here, whether culturally, linguistically, or whatever it is, like the way we look or the way we talk or the way we behave or anything.
Absolutely.
With languages, we should not be afraid of how we use languages. When people try to ask me, what words do you want me to use to describe you? And I'm like, whatever you feel like, whatever vocabulary you are capable of using. Or how do I pronounce your name? If you're a multilingual person, I don't think that's an issue because like different languages affect different way of pronouncing words, and words, of course, names are part of what we pronounce. We cannot say this is how my name is pronounced in English, because guess what? There's no name in English that is Itto. You just pronounce it however is comfortable for your accent, whether it's an English speaker, French, or whatever it is.
I'd love to know what things that you think or you feel that you've learned about yourself or in general in the process of learning multiple languages. And maybe what were some moments where, you experienced pride or you felt discouraged or any other emotion that we all experience as we're learning multiple languages?
That's a really good question. I don't think there is emotion that a multilingual person does not experience every day. Multilingualism is a gift. A lot of people don't think that, but research has shown that being a bilingual or multilingual is a huge gift. For example, when I work, I think in a language that is not mine, which means I have to think a lot.
Mm.
And now, of course, the thinking is automatic. But before, like I had to think that I am actually thinking in a language that is not mine. But I have learned a lot about myself. I have learned about human beings. I have learned a lot about different cultures. I can access material to read in different languages. I can listen to videos or audios in different languages. I can access social media in different languages. I also help other people. I can translate cultures and using the tool, which is language. Feeling proud. I remember when I first landed in the US, I was very hungry. I was very cold, and I didn't know what was going to come out of me, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in I lived in Asia a little bit, but I had a friend who met me at the airport. Here I came alone. I literally, in the piece I published at the Chicago Tribune, I said sightless and penniless. Like I didn't have the money. Of course, my Fulbright advisor met me like when I landed in Fayetteville. My host family, my fellow Fulbrighters welcomed me, but I didn't know that was going to happen. I came and I flew from Morocco to Casablanca, Morocco, to New York, and I landed in New York, I think around 12 or 1 a.m. And not only that I was hungry and cold, I was also sleepy. And there
Mm.
was this woman who was so angry and like cursing
Ugh.
in Egyptian Arabic, saying like bad words and being angry, being really frustrated.
With
She
you?
No, she was angry at Americans because she thought she missed her flight because of them, right? Like, and she was really angry. And interestingly, on the other side of the area we were sitting, there was a man and woman, Americans, who also were angry because she was angry, which was normal, right? Like, and I was there, and he was really, I didn't want to say that I spoke Arabic. The two Americans didn't even know that I spoke English too. So just because I looked brown, so I must have been like her, a person who speaks Arabic only, so there was no way for them to communicate with me, which gave them opportunity to be themselves, right?
Mm.
Like language is something that you don't see. Like you can't see me outside. You don't know what I speak. I am the only one who knows my secrets. So they were, so the American, one of the Americans was like, Jesus, please help me help this woman. I don't even know what she is saying. The woman was like, infidels, stupid, you left me, my plane, like in Egyptian Arabic. And I wanted to use the bathroom. And I waited until the two Americans on that side things were quiet. But of course, the old woman, it's okay for her to, I guess, not like to be angry because, she was scared that she's going to stay at the airport forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I called, I said, hey, can you please help me go to the bathroom? And the guy said, she's going to come back and help you. Apparently the woman left. When she came back, he said, she wants to go to the bathroom. And she said, which one of them? And I said, oh, the multilingual one. Like I answered her. And she took me. Like imagine, this is like my first day in the US. Well, I guess at the airport, I wasn't even where I was going to.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to Fayetteville, Arkansas. And she took me to the bathroom and I was like, thank you. And she's like, wow, you speak English? And I said, yeah, and Arabic too. And Egyptian too. Like I speak all of them. And I came back and I told the woman, can you please just slow down? They will take care of you. They are gonna find another flight. You're gonna be okay. And I made the situation better. So that's a moment of, I don't know. I don't think it's pride, but it's a privilege that we
Yeah.
have as multilinguals and other people don't.
I think it's such a gift to be able to do that. And it's a skill. I mean, I don't mean to say it like you're bestowed with this magical power from birth. Like you work at it, and
Mhm.
to be able to be in a situation where you can be of assistance to someone, I think is just tremendous. And you didn't know it at the time, but you had a real New York moment, like your first time landing here, you encountered an angry person right away. And New York welcomed you with open arms, as she does to us all. I'm a New Yorker, so I can say that.
Yeah, well, I've been to New York other times and it was good. So
Yeah. No, I mean, New Yorkers are incredible people and we are really helpful. And but I always like to say like that New York impatience gets people sometimes in those moments of inconvenience. On that note, I want to talk about the DateKeepers. I want to talk about your platform and where did it grow from? And how have you been able to use your background as a journalist to grow it and to build this platform? And most importantly, let us know where we can find you.
thank you. Yeah, the DateKeepers is not a dating site. So anyone, if you want to date, I'm sorry, we don't do that. So some people reach out and say, is it a dating site for journalists? I'm like, no, I don't think if you're a journalist, you're really, maybe some journalists do, but I don't think a lot of journalists don't have time to date because you have to chase the stories. The DateKeepers, so DateKeepers means Outini. That's the meaning of my last name. Yes, in Tamazight, Tini means date. So U means the keeper or the owner. Tini means
Mm.
date. So my last name means the date keeper without S. But when I got married, my husband took my last name and we became the date keepers. So that's how we decided to also give our company our name. So the date keepers is basically just Utini's.
I
Like
love that.
But the DateKeepers is an international media platform. We publish work by journalists and nonfiction writers. We also help provide editorial feedback and brainstorming with writers, for example, discussing what topics to write about. We help promote people's work through Friends page, the Friends of the DateKeepers, to our international audience. As how we grow, it's actually really funny. So in 2022, we were working on it. My husband and I was at a job that I hated. And I spent my basically before 9 and after 5 and weekends building the platform because I needed to do something that was not only satisfying, but also real, not just, bullshit, basically. We have grown from nothing to over 100,000 followers. We have writers from all over the world. We have published stories from every inhabited continents. We have published work from writers from all over the world. We have a lot of work coming soon. But to find us, you can find us on LinkedIn. We have me, Itto Outini, my husband, Makaya Outini, or the DateKeepers, or you can find our website, thedatekeepers.com. And yeah, that's who we are. And that's what we do in a very short summary, basically.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. I will add links to the DateKeepers and to your LinkedIn platform in the show notes for this episode so that people who want to get in touch with you can click and get in touch with you right away.
Awesome. Yeah.
I want to talk about your memoir. And as you mentioned that you've finished writing it, you're looking for publishing. When that happens, because we know it's going to happen. What do you hope that people reading your story and reading your memoir will take away from your words?
I hope that anyone who reads my memoir will know that they can do whatever they set themselves to do. Nothing is impossible. Even the word impossible says that I am possible, as they say. I don't have a publisher yet. Everything is still basically I'm still not sure like what is the best path for me to publish it. But yes, it's ready for publication, and I can't wait to publish it soon.
I can't wait to read it soon.
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
can't wait. And when it's published, please come back and please let's talk again. And, we'll get people to pick up their copies as well. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Itto. I had such a marvelous, wonderful, terrific, all the adjectives time talking with you today.
Same. Thank you so much, Elle. I wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you so much. I like to end each episode with the same question, just having a little bit of fun. If you will indulge us, do you have any jokes, popular sayings, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, proverbs, words of wisdom, or words of advice in Tamazight or in Moroccan Darija to share and to teach us?
In Tamazight, there is one, and it is الدين or the cousin, meaning when there's a lot of them, they will never dig. And remember, we are people of agriculture, working by hand, digging wells, digging tunnels, digging and building bridges. So the saying is like when there's a lot of people, they will never accomplish a task. If there's a lot, like don't put many people together because they will not like accomplish a thing. And it applies to friends. Like don't have many friends because they're not going to accomplish the purpose of friendship. Have a few that are good, that are gonna dig well and build a good bridge and stuff like that.
Oh, can you teach me that?
الدي عدون
Ade adun
or دقازن.
or the gazan?
Yes.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's a great saying. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you so much again. It's lovely chatting with you.
Really quickly before I let you go, in a situation like this, when you've been talking to someone for quite some time, and
Mm-hmm.
it's time for you to go your separate ways. Now, I know you speak several languages. So, in the first one that comes to mind, you're about to go separate ways after a lovely conversation. What is the best way for you to say goodbye?
أكمل يعاون ربي is Tamazight like um goodbye, and then Darija Slama, and English, of course, goodbye. I almost forgot the English when I was like, wait. Like when you think in many languages, you might say something that doesn't make sense in another one.
Thank you so much again, Ito, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.
Okay, take care. Thanks. Bye.
New episodes of Speaking Tongues are available every Monday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to like and share episodes with other language lovers like ourselves.